Okay, so it's recording. So we're going to move on to the last weapon I've had an audience request for tonight, which is the mek'leth, which Kirok here has suggested. So I don't know if Kirok, can you show the audience what a mek'leth is for the people watching the recording? So this is the mek'leth from Star Trek. This is I think this is actually the classic mek'leth as well. I'll be honest, as much as I love Discovery, like it's probably my favorite Star Trek, it's also, the one thing I really dislike about it is I don't think the new Klingon weapon design is particularly good. Yeah, it's just the mek'leth. This is the Klingon kind of, smaller, more practical, bladed weapon. So yeah, it's kind of, so it's got a nice hand guard. It's got like not quite a D-ring, but close enough. It's got a lovely bit. It's got a lovely bit on the guard to catch weapons as well. So it's got a forward curve, lots of jagged bits. So I think would actually be very, very good for parry riposte. Just in terms of you can parry with the thing, and then you can parry with the thing, and your opponent's sword is likely to get caught or tangled, giving you an extra window, to come in. So I'm just going to switch to my screen to demonstrate what I do. So in terms of saber versus mek'leth, so probably with a cutlass, I don't know how much of a reach, you probably have a small reach advantage given the length of the weapon, because it is a chunky knife. It's probably a little shorter than most cutlasses, although the shortest cutlass was probably about the length of the longest mek'leth. So it's got to be this is possibly the nerdiest thing I've ever done. I can't guarantee that. But yeah, so you don't, so you've got that reach advantage. You also have a slight advantage that has slight less hand protection, but so long as your opponent with the mek'leth is holding their guard, their guard well, attacking the hand is going to be difficult, because in most ways the hand will be particularly vulnerable in the mek'leth if they adopt these sorts of guards, and the easiest solution to that is just not adopt them, especially given how short the weapon is. So what you'd be so really it would be for the most part, be just a sword fight where your opponent can tangle your weapon a bit more. Also, the forward curve means that they can reach around your parries a bit more. So what I'd be looking to do against the mek'leth, throw attacks, throw parry riposte like I normally do. Use all the sorts of tactics I normally use. And if you don't use the sorts of tactics I use your tactics, not mine. The only thing I'd really be doing differently against the weapon is I'd probably be parrying a little wider so that I don't, so that my opponent, so the curvature of the weapon, the forward curve of the weapon doesn't get me, or I'm not going to get nailed by like forward curve. So I want a slightly wider parry, slightly more extended, which does leave me more vulnerable to feints. But if I know that I'm more vulnerable to feints from doing that, I also know my opponent is more likely to feint me. So if I'm throwing the wide parries and I'm watching for a feint, I can throw a quick counter attack, a quick counter cut, or even quite an aggressive feint to draw them out. The other thing I'd be more inclined to do is just to make sure that I clear the weapon, that I don't get tangled up. I'd actually be inclined to transport. So the idea of trying to transport or press defer is I parry, and before I counterattack, I move to another hand position. So from here I'm going from cart to second, and then attacking as a way of displacing. But that also means that I can disentangle my weapon. One is I've got control of their weapon, so I've parried to get control. I then transport. To ensure that I'm free. Attack. And I choose lines of transport that I know are going to keep my weapon free, get it off, get off the sticky outy bits. But the other advantage of this is when I transport, When I transport, my opponent's reaction is going to be to try and recover to guard, which means that they're going to have to free their weapon. They want to free their weapon. They don't want to be tangled. And because they've got the weapon that does the tangling, if I can make them not want to tangle, then I'm not going to get tangled. So that's kind of my approach. But yeah, it's not huge. Overall, it's not hugely different. Honestly, if you didn't do anything different against Mekhleth, depending on your tactics, you'd probably be okay. Like, I honestly do think just my normal game of trying to attack the sword hand and para riposte as kind of my primary two things I do would be perfectly fine, perfectly effective. I'd want slightly wider parries, maybe to not get caught by surprise, although if I am, I am. I do want to transport just because transporting is cool and gives me an advantage, but it's not necessary. Yeah, I mean, the Mekhleth is basically a sword with slightly different geometry. It's not as different. If I've got a saber, if I've got a saber, I've got a reach advantage so I can take advantage of. So I can attack the weapon hand in absence. I don't need to form opposition because I've got time to react to them coming back at me. And yeah, if I don't, and yeah, if they, if I don't have that advantage, if I've just got a cutlass, which is a similar length, or only slightly longer, then I don't have the reach advantage, but I still can do all the things I normally do. So that's how I would deal with a Mekhleth, which is not a weapon I thought that I'd be working out how to deal with tonight, but yeah, there you go. So I guess before we sort of finish up for the night and move to conversation and birthday drinks for me, are there any questions about how I deal with Mekhleth? I'm going to take that as a no. So, Kirak asked, so Kirak has asked about the Bathleth. Okay.
That's Belfja. That means I think it means with honor.
I see.
There's commonality with the Bathleth because Bathleth is the honor sword.
Yeah, I think my personal headcanon for the Klingon weapons is that the Bat'leth is like a ritualized dueling weapon, which is because unless you grab it two-handed and swing, it's not really going, like the, pugil sticking with it is not going to be able to strike that deep, given the shape of it and everything, or unless you can get a very lucky blow in. So it's not actually a very dangerous weapon from that perspective, unless you grab it two-handed, at which point it's very, very big and clunky and poorly weighted for two-handed use. So you're swinging these big, predictable swings. But the one thing it is really, really good for is like just you stick it on the center line and just parry with the thing, and you can occupy a lot of space because you can occupy a lot of space because you've got basically two fortes at each end. So it's this very strong two-handed parrying device, which means that Klingons could have these kind of big epic kind of ritual duels, and they're only really getting light cuts that with like even with modern medicine, let alone more scientifically advanced medicine, will be fairly easy to heal. And so you have a way that people can do. You can have a way of people can duel without, or like Klingons can duel without risking life or risking their lives too excessively.
Yeah, even just aesthetically, it kind of reminds a bit of dueling shields.
I hadn't thought of that. I had not thought of that. Yeah, but to answer what I thought Kirak's question was about how I deal with a Bat'leth, or how a person with a Cutlass would deal with a Bat'leth. I mean, how I deal with a Bat'leth depends on what weapon I have, I guess. But yeah, you just basically rain attacks on them because you've got such a reach advantage that if they're holding it like this, they can parry fairly effectively, but they can't get back at you. I mean, they'd have to make a big movement. And if they try and step and attack you after attack, you just counter thrust. You just immediately go to a counter thrust. So you just keep wailing on them and keep them on the defensive until either something slips through or you can land a feint. And just okay, and if your opponent gets frustrated and goes to the two-handed mode and starts swinging, you just the weapon doesn't a bat'leth is actually they're not hugely long things. They're about as long as this, which means you've still got a reach advantage, but you've also got an agility advantage. So as long as you're forming good, strong parries, you're less likely to worry about fates because all their movement, because the weight of the weapon, the two-handedness, the two-handed swings, everything is committed. So yeah, you just need to make sure you get a strong parry and then riposte, and then a quick riposte, or even riposte to the hands. And yeah, I that's how I'd approach fighting a bat'leth. Not that I have an experience fighting against bat'leths, but yeah, this is kind of why my headcanon is that they are a ritual dueling weapon rather than like a practical kind of killage weapon. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone. Kirk says I would set my face at a kill. that is a viable strategy as well. I don't know. I was kind of imagining that I'm, this is sort of more of a Mr. Sulu scenario. Just busting out the fencing weapons. All right, cool. Sweet. Well, if there's no further sort of questions or comments, or we're done being incredibly dorky for the night. I'm going to finish up the recording here. So if you're watching at home, thank you for watching certainly to the end of this video, but hopefully to the end of the entire playlist. So you've seen all of the Cutlass counter tactics. And yeah, if you're still, if you're here watching this live, we're now going to go do some drinking. As was probably mentioned, it is my birthday today, so there's a nice bottle of birthday mead waiting for me, which I'm going to bust open. And yeah, hopefully if you're watching recordings at home, you can make it along and we can catch up. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking now because this is going to get very, very strange if I keep going.